It's a nice open, Cindy. And Cindy is on the phone. She's not with us in the video realm, which is okay because Cindy will still be talking throughout it. So we have the little banner, and if you're on the podcast, you'll hear her voice. So don't worry about it. She's on the podcast. We're gonna be good. But if you remember, last year at this time, uh, which was crazy. Last year at this time, the Red Wings were um, firing Derek Lalone, which I don't know how you want to say it, Cindy. It was Derek Lalone did not go good going into his final last games as the Red Wings coach. He was 13, 17, 4, 30 points in 34 games. And then when Todd McClellan took over, 26, 18, 4, 56 points in 48 games. I would say they upgraded in the coaching realm. I would say that the way that this Red Wings team is right now, they are not just good; they are pretty damn good. They are at the top of the Eastern Conference, with tied with Carolina, who they will play tomorrow. And they played 38 games compared to Carolina's 36, so that's probably a reason that they get the little bump up. But the reality of the situation is the Red Wings have been playing at all. They playing at a great level. And, there's several people that you can say to this in terms of who is who and why the Red Wings are in the situation they're in. I stand from it like this. They had a great coaching change with McClellan instead of Lalone. And like we talked about in prior podcasts with prior years, we talked about the point percentage the last 2 years in November and December. In December, they've passed 433. And in November, they've done a damn good job. So it was all about that. And we talked about the winning percentage in November and December, and 475 win percentage. They had a better win percentage this year. 390, they were way better this year in December. So all is on the right track. Obviously, we were talking last year about the coaching change and how it would really, you know, how it would go into what the Red Wings were trying to do. Is Eiserman playing off track? And then we're here right now on December 26, 2025. We're going into 2026, and the Red Wings are playing at a unique level, obviously. And this is a team that, if you look at last year, 16, 18, 4, and then now they're first in Atlantic, 22, 13, and 3. So this has been a great start. I think we both expected this when Todd McClellan took over, that this team would be way better than they were with under Derek alone. And I think it was just the coaching alone. We've talked at nauseum about that, but I want to get your thoughts on what you've seen from the Red Wings in the year after the coaching change. What's the difference? Are we heading towards a new era of Red Wings hockey? I have my thoughts. Let you get your thoughts first.
Well, I think I don't know if you remember, but I said last year when the coaching change was made that if the Red Wings made a tremendous rebound back into a respectable status, that Todd McClellan would be the MVP. There's no doubt about it that his leadership, his style, his mindset, all of that is what is contributing. And I'll say contributing, but I think it's been the game changer, and we said that before. But I'll be kind to say, contributing, because let's face it, a lot of the guys on this team are contributing to the success that the Wings have had. But what Todd McClellan has done is that he has found, I think, a synergy with Dylan Larkin. I think the reason why you see Dylan Larkin doing as well as he is because of the coaching expertise, talent, and skill of Todd McClellan. I think you wouldn't have seen Dylan Larkin performing at the level he is. And this is one of the other things we talked about last year, Joe. If you remember, we talked about Todd McClellan having the ability to allow and to enable players like Dylan Larkin to achieve his potential. He hadn't had that opportunity yet. And with Todd McClellan, he's not only had that opportunity, he's taken full advantage of that opportunity. So credit to the captain for that, but even more so to Todd McClellan for bringing it. He did it in San Jose. He did it in Edmonton. Why didn't people think that it wouldn't happen now? He's bringing exactly what he brought to those other two teams that saw similar results. Now you're seeing that result again. So I'm not surprised at all. I think that a lot of people didn't. They kept trying to think the changes had to be done in the roster. Did people not like the coaching? Yeah, but they would say, well, I mean, even we were guilty of this, Joe, right? I mean, they got to do something in net. They got to get a netminder who's reliable. They've got to get a second line center. All of these things. And those things might have been true, but I'll tell you, I believe you could have brought in the best second line center. You practically did, actually. You could have brought in the best goaltender. And if you hadn't made the changing in the head coach, if you hadn't changed the coaching staff, you might have seen incremental changes or improvements, but you wouldn't have seen the dramatic difference. And it has been a dramatic turnaround and 180, I would argue, from a year ago.
Yeah, the way I look at it is the Red Wings in the year prior after, last year at this time we talked about it. I went back and listened to the podcast. It was actually pretty funny. We actually nailed a lot of things that we were talking about. But we were talking about, you know, how this team looked a little lethargic and they weren't prepared for games and all that stuff. And I look at this year with Todd McClellan, and I look at this year with relatively the same players. Did they get some new players on there with like Van Riemsdyk? Yes. Is there more rookies, more young players on the roster? Yes. But the reality of the situation is they all play as one. And I think that's the most important thing. When we were talking last year about the Red Wings, we were talking about they had issues staying on task. They had issues staying within the game, staying how they're doing things, and it kind of multiplied game after game with Malone. With McClellan, it seems like when there's an issue, he'll call it out really quick. He'll say, "Look, this is not the way we play. This is not the way this whole game is going to go. We're going to fix this." And I think that's the most important part because me and you were talking before the podcast about taking self accountability for your actions, and so when we look at the Red Wings, they're taking accountability for their actions, their play on the ice. Tal McClellan will make the change really quickly if there's something that he doesn't like in his coaching style, and he'll make the change with players too because we've seen him move players up and down the lineup, different ways that they're put on the ice. So it's been very interesting to see what he's been able to do as a coach. And Lalone never did any of that. Lalone just he kind of like let them go. And you could see what Lalone is doing at Toronto because Toronto is the last place team in the Atlantic right now. So it just goes to show you that good coaching matters. You could have the right players, but if they don't have the right coach, it doesn't really matter. So the year after the Red Wings fired Derek Lalone, they're in a much better spot, in my opinion. And I don't think anybody could disagree with that. When we look at this Red Wings team right now, in terms of where they are and who they're playing, and they're first in their division. They got, we talk about it all the time on this podcast, how you got to be better at home than you are on the road. They're pretty good at home and they're pretty good on the road. So it's a pretty good evens thing. And they're 8-2-0. And I thought the game that showed exactly where they're going to be is that Dallas game. You want to play the best teams. You want to beat the best teams. And they had a chance to do that. And they go out there, they play the Dallas Stars, who are rightfully one of the best teams in the NHL. I don't think anybody
For
could say.
sure.
So
For sure.
when you play Dallas, you go out there and you beat them in a commanding game where it was freaking phenomenal to watch. And the guy who gets the most flack for the way he plays, he brought you into that game. He tied the game and he won the game. That's Dylan Larkin. And I think when we talk about this team, we got to talk about Larkin and the way that he's led this team, the way that he's led the play, not by his loud actions like some of the fans want, but by his play. Just a tremendous end to the first half of the season for the Red Wings.
Well, this is what's going to make tomorrow's game so exciting to watch. And this is why a lot of the national sports media now is talking about this game tomorrow, because you almost have a clash of the Titans coming up here, because you've got a very exciting, but yet I think some people are cautiously optimistic. Like, is this going to last? Is this for real? Kind of a thing. Cinderella story in the Detroit Red Wings coming up against Carolina, who has been pretty much a staple in the playoffs. So you've now got kind of, David coming up against Goliath a little bit. The fact that the Toronto um, the Maple Leafs are at the bottom of the ranks, and quite frankly, so is Jeff Blashill's team, the Chicago Blackhawks. And people want to
Hmm.
argue, oh well, that's because they lost Bedard to an injury, they lost Nazar, our boy Frankie. Love you, Frank. So glad that you're enjoying the holidays with the family. Um, but they lost two of their quote unquote star players, and they're saying this is the problem. No, it's really not. I mean, that is a problem, but it's not the problem. You look at Blashill and Lalone, and the reality is there is no substitute for experience. And Todd McClellan has that in spades over Blashill or Lalone. Then that doesn't mean that those two coaches might not eventually be able to refine their skill set and learn to become better coaches. But they weren't the coach that the Detroit Red Wings needed. They needed a Todd McClellan. They
Hmm.
needed someone with the experience to know what he's looking at and exactly what to do. I think that for Blashill and Lalonde, it was more of a learn as you go. It was on the job training, and that's fine. But that for some organizations, maybe you're good with that. But like the AHL, but
Yeah.
but not for an original six team like the Detroit Red Wings that is trying to get back to the level of greatness they once had. So those coaches weren't going to get us there. And that, quite frankly, that falls on Steve Eiserman. I think he kept him around way too long. I
Hmm.
don't like the fact that he wanted to experiment with unproven coaches. Um, you know, you say, Steve, I think is at not a bad GM. Okay. Some people that I talk to regularly that are that have a long-standing amount of experience also with different players and this team and hockey in general, um, they don't think Steve Eiserman's a good GM. I disagree with them because I do think he's a good GM, but he's not good at everything, and there's areas that he struggles with, and that was one of them. um he kept those coaches around too long. First off, I don't think you should have brought him in anyway, and if you're gonna do an experiment, do it for a year. You should be able to see everything you need to know in a year. Okay, I know that when I bring on new staff, I used to say I need 90 days to evaluate somebody.
Yeah.
Now,
Most companies. Yeah.
yeah, 90 days, right? One quarter, several monthly cycles, whatever. Now I've gotten to the point that it's just because of the experience that I have that I'm so well attuned to what I'm looking for,
Yep.
like Todd McClellan is. I can tell you in 30 days. I
Yep.
know in 30 days if that individual is going to work out or not, if they're going to be performing above expectations, below expectations, right about where I figured. I can make that estimation or that determination now in 30 days. Todd McClellan is like that. He was able to assess what the Detroit Red Wings needed, what he had, and what he had to make changes with by the end of that last half of last season. And then in the off season, he went ahead with Steve and they went about making those changes. They tried to make a few acquisitions, didn't work out. But he knew what he needed to do. And when they hit training camp, he was ready. Again, a testament to experience that there is no substitute for it, Joe.
No, and I think the experience really, you had a slogan on one of your campaigns, "Experience matters." I think for an NHL coach, if we're being honest with each other, it does matter. You look across the NHL standings, you know, uh, the Red Wings have Todd McClellan. He's good, right? John Cooper, Tampa. Those are Montreal has St. Louis. Okay, St. Louis is a player, so he has experience in the game, so that helps out right there. You go to Carolina, you look at Rod Brindamore. Uh, Third in the Metropolitan is the Islanders. Who's their coach? That's right, Patrick Wall. You look at Washington with their coach. He was a new coach. It doesn't matter. Panthers, they're the Stanley Cup champion, the defending Stanley Cup champion. Paul Maurice experience. His definitely didn't matter. And then you look at it like this, like Colorado. Their coach has been there for a while. Okay, Dallas, obviously that coach came in there and he really didn't need to do anything because they were a well built machine. But you look at across the NHL landscape, the best teams have good coaches, and that's what it comes down to. And the Red Wings are a good ass team right now, and they finally have the coaching that I think really matters. That's what it comes down to. You could have all the players you want, but if you don't have the coaching, it nothing matters. And I think that's what hampered the Detroit Red Wings the last year. When we were at this point last year, we were talking about the coaching change. And I remember in that episode there was a thing that you said that I'm gonna tell you because I couldn't record it because for some reason the thing with my iPhone's been really acting up lately. But you said this and I laughed my ass off because it's true. You said, I just don't think Lalonde was ready to be an NHL head coach. You also said, and we both said this too. You know, Eisenman should have made the decision that summer that he shouldn't have came back. And they kind of whispered and wallowed, and they said, "Okay, we're gonna keep Lalonde. He's gonna come. He's gonna get fired by Christmas, and then you're wasting November and December basically for a coach that you don't have belief in." And you said this, and this is what resonates with me. You said it's a dumb move, and anything that people say about the Iser plan can be questioned from this point on because that was a bad decision that he let you know keep percolating, and he finally made the decision, and now he's got to hope that McClellan takes over and does a good job. That's what you said.
Well, I'm glad that he has. I'm glad that Todd McClellan has shown us exactly who he is and what he's capable of as well. I've often said, and this I've said this in politics, I've said it in business, I've said it, on this podcast about the Detroit Red Wings and other teams as well. You can have a Ferrari in the garage, but if you don't know how to drive it, it's just a car.
Yep.
It doesn't matter. And so the fact is that none of these coaches knew how to drive the Ferrari that the Detroit Red Wings could have been and now are showing us that they are. Lalonde is, or excuse me, McClellan is saying, not just give me the keys, but he's saying, show me where the Autobahn is because I'm ready to go. And so I believe that what I hope is that he will get a contract extension. I hope that they'll be able to keep him here for a long time. I hope he likes Detroit. He was here before, and I hope he gets himself reseated here because I'd like to see Todd McClellan with us for a very long time. We've got a couple of long-term pieces, and I think that he's going to be another critical one, every bit as critical as it was to lock down Dylan Larkin and Moritz Seider.
Yeah, and a year after we're here, and it goes the point. This is the next point that I think we will both raise is when you look at this team, the key areas that are taking huge leaps. We talked about Larkin, we've talked about Seider already, but when I look at this breakdown of the top points, I see Lucas Raymond taking the next step. I see Seider taking the next step. I see Alex DeBrincat being kind of a two-way player, 20 assists, 20 goals. Okay, that's pretty damn good. You see Emmett Fenny in there, I don't think anybody expected a seventh round pick in Emmett Fenny to be the guy that he is.
Yeah, who saw that coming? I didn't.
And that's part of that's part of the questions that you don't really know, that this is what made Yzerman really good in Tampa Bay. Is he had a Braden Point come along. He had a Nikita Kucherov in the second round come along. You need those second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and in the case of Emmett Fenny, seventh round picks to really pan out. And it's just interesting to look at it because, I go back on it, Cindy. We talked about it ad nauseum when Holland got fired. Yzerman took over a prospect pool that was probably bottom 10 in the league, maybe bottom 5 in the league. And he's really realistically turned it around in the midst of expansion in the NHL, in the midst of bad salary cap hell that the Red Wings were in. And he's really turned it around into a good thing. And now you're starting to see that the Red Wings are starting to show what they're capable of. And I even would take it a step further. you're starting to see what their prospect pool is looking like. Because look at what Grand Rapids is doing. Look what Sebastian Costa is doing. Look what the Toledo Walleye are doing. Even though ECHL is on a player strike right now, which is pretty funny. But um, even the Griffins. I mean, guys like Sebastian Costa, Lombardi, Mazer, guys like that are taking steps forward. And even at the NHL level, you're seeing players take steps forward. Nate Danielson comes up to the big roster, does some things. Emmett Fenney has been a huge piece to this team. Anybody saying differently is ridiculous, and he's lit the NHL on fire. I mean, when they're talking about him on the Spittin' Chicklets, you've arrived. You know what I'm saying? You've arrived to the NHL. So,
For sure, for sure. Well, some of the areas that I think that the Red Wings have really taken huge leaps. I think the draft classes have gotten better, absolutely. And let's, too, this is why I don't think Steve is a bad GM. I think he is a good GM. Would I say great? No, I would
mhm,
say he's a good GM that came into a very bad situation. You pointed out the pathetic draft classes with that he had inherited, but he also inherited a couple of really crappy player contracts that he had to honor for a couple of years that had him kind of stuck. He had some retained earnings that he had to deal with from a couple of other things. He had some stuff that just dead cap space, and but he did what he could with what he had, and also too, I don't think Steve has had the most cooperative ownership or the most involved ownership. I think it's ownership that saw it like this: we bring home Steve Eiserman, we're done. I think they were kind of hands off after that. They just thought that Steve could kind of run everything, do everything, but they haven't been as engaged, and they haven't been as I say interested in what's going on with the Wings. I think they'd kind of written it off. They figure, okay, give the fans back Steve Eiserman. That'll keep people, buying tickets and merch
mhm,
and all that stuff. But Steve Eiserman's like, no, I'm gonna take this thing seriously. So I mean, I think he had, some golden handcuffs on him too, to a certain extent. I think he was given an awful lot to come to back to Detroit. And I don't necessarily mean money, although that's part of it. I think there were a lot of considerations and a whole lot of grace and leverage that's been extended to him. And he was given, I think, a lot of freedom in a lot of areas to do things. So I think that, he had a lot to clean up, and that
yep,
that kind of slowed down the progress. But as far as you're talking about the Iser plan, but some of the areas that they've made huge strides, and again, I think you really have to credit McClellan with this. Is big piece for me, special teams,
mhm,
just massive amounts of improvement. Um,
yes,
I mean, and that had to happen. That had to happen. The stats bear it out. I mean, 5-on-5 hockey has gotten so much better, but that's taken longer. Well, we really saw the effect of special teams first, but I think what I see coming is much better 5-on-5 because of the way that they are being coached, and they are being coached to play more in units than they are you've got, hey, buddy, you've got to do better. You got to produce. You're not producing. You're not what we expected or whatever. I don't think there's so much of that. I think it's far more. I think that McClellan has really made it very clear that every single one of his roster players is critical. It's not like, oh, Patrick Kane is the most critical or Dylan Larkin is the most critical. Absolutely, those guys fill roles that are important. But I think Todd McClellan's approach has been every single roster player is critical. And our fourth line has to be every bit as good as the top line. And he's not afraid to do change ups in the lines if he needs to. And he's also at the same time building reliable depth. So,
mhm.
but for me, key area that was a huge leap has got to be special teams at the top of the list.
Yeah, I think special teams has been crucial, and I mean, even more so, like if you look at penalty kill, because last year was an issue for the Red Wings was penalty kill, and they're not. they're not something that they got a lot better in, but they're 20th in the league, and they're right around where Vegas is. They're right around where Edmonton is, Anaheim, Montreal. Those teams. I mean, there's only one team that is at the top, and it's surprising to me is the Buffalo Sabres are at the top of the NHL penalty kill, which is insane. But I wanted to show this to you because I wanted to show this to people too because this is interesting. When you look at the Red Wings draft classes by year, okay, this was Holland's last two draft classes. And you go, okay, which players have made a significant impact? Well, Rasmussen has been pretty decent as a back guy, but you look at those two draft classes. You got what was the Valeno, who's not really a great player. He only had 40 goals in 338 games. Same with Zadina. Bergman was the same thing. Alex Alec Regula, who he played 44 games and whatever. But Rasmussen's really the only one that you had that is actually good. You go to the first two drafts for Eisman, 3 years. I mean, 2 years. You get Zabrano's obviously not with Detroit, but you got Raymond at the top, Seider, Albert Johansson, and Elmer Soderblom. I take that as a win. You go to the next year, you got Edvinson, Kosa, and Mazer, which those haven't Kosa and Mazer haven't had a step up to the NHL, but Edvinson has been a huge piece. Casper, their first round pick, nailing that right there. Then you look at 2023, Danielson, Pelika, Emmett Fenny, and then you could say that Trey Augustine will be on the team in a year or so. But you look at it across the board, and you're going, okay, this guy has done a good job, and that's why the Red Wings find themselves in key areas where they're taking huge leaps. Because the way I look at it is, their draft classes have gotten better. They're getting more impact from their draft classes. A guy like Emmett Fenny, who was drafted in the 2023 2023 draft class as a seventh round pick. He's playing pretty damn good. So it just goes back to show you, like, if you build it, they will come. And one of the things what we're going to talk about in a few is there's players that are becoming more and more of a key player, and it's on the defensive pairings. It's on the defensive pairings, but they've been a lot better this year, and the stats bear it out. Their penalty kill is pretty good. Their power play is pretty good. But the net penalty kill, not where you want it to be, but the penalty kill overall is 18th in the league, but net penalty kill is 20th. So they can get better there, but they'll get better there. It's probably where they're going to go. But it's been an interesting time for Eisman, and I agree with you. Chris Illich kind of looked at this as a huge, just let him do what he needs to do to really change this thing around. I don't really think Illich was going to say, no, you can't do this, because if he says that, I think Eisman would say, well, F you, you could take this team over and do whatever you want. But Eisman has done a damn good job at just building the roster. I think this roster's better this year, and I think it has the opportunity to be better in the next couple years than it will ever be.
Oh, there's definitely opportunities. I think, there's also a couple of, what we do in management, and I've done most of my life in business, politics, whatever, is you do SWOT assessments, right?
Mhm.
SWOT, SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And I think that some of the strengths the Detroit Red Wings are showing right now is the ability to conform their game to new coaching. I think you're seeing evidence of that because, let's face it, McClellan could coach them all day long, but if they're not willing and able to implement that, it doesn't matter. He's like talking to the wall. And I've dealt with teams like that. Like, you could tell them all day long what to do the right thing, and they just simply don't or can't do it. So credit to this team and these players for being able and willing to accommodate what and understand and implement what Todd McClellan. So that's a huge strength. Weakness, I think some of the weaknesses are there's still we're still, even though Gibson's had a great month, no doubt about it, absolutely outstanding, but we still lack a certain consistency
Yep.
in goal. Okay. So that's a weakness we have to be aware of, because even though he's hot right now, I don't have the confidence to see that sustaining itself. I hope it does, but I don't think we've seen evidence of sustainability yet. 30 days isn't quite enough. So the opportunities, we've got tremendous opportunities to bring up again, and you pointed it out, Joe, just now. We've got some great talent in the pipeline, and we've got a tremendous opportunity to bring those players up, get these new guys that made the roster, these young rookies, giving them an opportunity to get a taste of the playoffs, which is fantastic. Regardless of how far you make it, the dynamics are completely different. I've been told by people who've been there, and I've talked to a lot of those folks, the dynamics in the playoffs completely different than the regular season.
Yeah, and
Completely different.
I think Dylan Larkin commented on it on the NHL on TNT. I don't know if you saw the clip, but he basically said, I can't wait to have the playoff hockey here in Detroit, because he's starting to believe it, and that's what they want. And Dylan Larkin, he's a kid from here. He knows how this whole thing works and how the Red Wings are graded ultimately, and it'll be fun to have playoff hockey at LCA and playoff basketball at LCA, because both those teams are doing pretty good, and I think those teams are well built for the future. And I think, honestly, I think we're going to be going into 2026, and I think this is going to be the golden era, the start of a golden era for Detroit sports. I know the Lions had a tough year this year, but they'll get back on the horse and be all right. But
Well, you saw, I looked outside the window today, Joe, and I saw all the tears of the Detroit faithful just falling down in sheets. I'm like, that's not rain. What are they talking about? That's not a coming ice storm. No, no, that's the tears of all the Lions fans who are hopeful and who had to sit through yesterday's game, which, by the way, I have to admit, I could not get past the first half. I just couldn't do
yeah,
it. I just couldn't.
I wouldn't have told my worst enemy to do that. So
Oh man, I couldn't do it. But one of the things I think is the Detroit Red Wings move forward here. One of the, some of the future considerations that have to be taken into account, and this is kind of where you fall into the threat level a little bit. DeBrincat, I think one of the reasons why DeBrincat has been as good as he is because he has Patrick Kane and vice versa.
yeah,
So you were talking about defensive pairings. Why have you seen Mo Seider explode? And we're going to talk about that. I mean, to me, Seider's always been good. Did he have a little bit of a slump? Yeah, but I don't even consider it a slump because
mm,
I think his exceptional play has overcome that. But the fact that they finally have him paired with, I think, is one of the most effective defensive pairs in the league in terms of Edmondson and Seider. So they found some of this chemistry, and my worry is that we won't have that tremendous performance if any of those things change. If those, and let's face it, Patrick Kane is not going to play forever. I think that I think he will finish his career in Detroit. I think that was his intent all along. Will the Red Wings be able to sign him to, say, a 3-year contract to finish out his career? Is probably what he's got left. Although I
hmm
shouldn't necessarily say that because Chris Chelios proved everybody wrong by being, an exceptional Hall of Fame level player into his late 40s. But let's just say another 3-year contract. Steve likes 3-year contracts for Patrick Kane. I would feel a lot more comfortable, not because I think Patrick Kane is going to continue to perform at an exceptional level. I think he's going to level off and then start to decline as they all do a little bit. But I think he is critical to the offensive firepower that we are seeing from Alex DeBrincat. And as you pointed out, defensive play as well. I just think that tandem is really, or that pairing is really, really, really important, as important as our top pair in Edmondson and Seider.
yeah. Here's what I think is going to happen going down the stretch. We're going to talk about Mo Seider because we have to talk about him. There's people in the comments that are saying about Mo Seider, but let me just give this what I think is going to happen. And Cindy, you can bark in whenever you want, and people, you can bark in whenever you want. Um, I think at some point we will see Sebastian Cossa. I think that's coming down the pike. Okay. I think that Eisenman will make a pretty big trade, maybe 2 trades at the deadline, because I think he sees what is happening with this team, and I think that he believes in his team too. I can agree with him the last prior 2 years that there was no reason to believe in the Detroit Red Wings in the way that they were playing. So it wouldn't have made sense to just add someone who wouldn't have really helped the team because I think the team was kind of fraudulently placed. When you have 2 good months of hockey and then you fall off the face of the earth in March, it's probably a reason that you fell off the face in March because you were probably playing bad hockey. As we've said the last 2 years, bad hockey the last two years in December and November. But I'll take it a step further. The Red Wings, in my opinion, the reason that they've taken a huge leap in terms of their development, the way they're playing. Yes, Patrick Kane has added a good portion, but Eisman going and get JVR was a huge thing. So that was a huge signing, and a lot of people dismissed it at the time. I think people said that he was too old or he was decrepit, and Cindy was like, "Wait, don't be mean to old people. I'm old." Just kidding.
That's
but
right. That absolutely. It's like what is like I'm gonna quote that song again, Joe. You're that country music lover, right? I'm as good as I once, but well, I'm not as good as I once was, but I'm as good once as I ever was. Well,
yes,
sometimes
Toby
that's
Keith,
all
yeah,
you need, right? You
yeah,
just
and JVR has been a huge piece to this team. Patrick Kane's been a huge piece to this team, and you could see that they're huge pieces to this team. So what I'm trying to say is, when you got guys like that are helping the lineup, I think that there's Heisman's probably seeing exactly what he wants to see out of this team. And I think that we're heading towards I really do think this is the truth though, but I think we're heading towards a golden age of Detroit sports. I said earlier, I think Sebastian Cossa it could be an elite goaltender. I think Trey Augustine could be an elite goaltender. I think Mo Seider is the defenseman that you have all wanted to come up here. He's been fantastic in every word of the realm. And you look at teams across this city, you look at the Red Tigers. I mean, not the Tigers, the Pistons, Cade Cunningham. You look at the Lions and all their talent. I think we're heading towards the golden age of sports in Detroit, but I think the Red Wings are heading towards another dynasty type run because this guy they got here, Moritz Seider, what a great player he is. What a great player he is. He I will tell
I
you
love
what,
that
man.
kid. I love
You
that kid.
you love the kid since he
I
came up
do.
here
I have. Yeah.
and you got his jersey and all that jazz. But this kid,
Oh
you
yeah.
look at the statistics of this offensive rating plus 6.9, defensive rating plus 4.4. And then you look at the net rating 11.3, which is uncanny. This is from hockey stat cards. They do a pretty good job of it, but Norris, he should be in the Norris campaign. And if there wasn't a guy named Cal Markar, he probably would win it. But he definitely deserves to be in the running for it because he's had a fantastic year. Been one of the most reliable players on the Red Wings by far. And there's no he it's different from years past. I think what's helped him out a little bit, and you could say it, Cindy, what's helped him out a lot is having guys behind him who could perform. I think what happened in years past was every team knew that the Red Wings defensive pairings were terrible, so they would send out their best of the best against Seider and wear him down. And then you got to where Edvinsson came up and Pelika came up, and they started contributing. And Albert Johansson, he's had up and down year, but again, you're seeing that this team has pieces, and I think they've helped Seider become the player that we all thought he would become. I know that you thought he could become this, and I think the people thought he can become this because Seider was he's a hell of a player. We knew he was a hell of a player, but we just didn't know where he was going in terms of because of the talent around him. And I think the talent's gotten better. And you've seen Seider take a step up. And I can only imagine if we go to the deadline and Eiserman gets a defensive guy to help out Seider even more. I think that's what could really take him to the next level. And when you have guys like Nicholas Lidstrom in your corner, when you have defensemen, great defensemen talking about you as a defenseman, you got to believe it. You really have to believe it.
There's no doubt in my mind, Mo Seider was the best decision Steve Eiserman ever made, ever since he's been back with the Wings. I mean, he's made a lot of good moves. That by far was his best move he ever made. It was a bit of a sleeper. People didn't know who Mo Seider was, but and I was told this. by somebody who is with the Wings organization, very high up. And matter of fact, we were having a conversation outside of the hockey area. I was with a couple other um, Stanley Cup winners, and we were standing there talking, and I said, hey, I said, how about if I give you a call next week? We were talking about another project, and he's like, oh, I gotta go to, he said, I gotta go to Europe. I'm leaving, but when I get back, let's connect, right? And I said, fantastic. And he was going over to scout Mo Seider, and that's what he was going there for. They had already called him. Nick Lindstrom had already tipped them off, and their top scout over there in Europe. Actually, their top scout in Sweden, but he covers all of Europe for the Wings as well. He had also They had both Lindstrom and their top scout over there had called this individual that I was talking to about Mo Seider. And so I wasn't terribly surprised to hear his name when he was drafted, because I knew they were scouting him beforehand. But I'll tell you, when it really hit me, the impact that they expected Mo Seider to have, and I think, Joe, you'll remember I talked about this on one of the years ago podcasts, but when I go to training camp every year, I did go this last year, but most years I'm at training camp, and I'm taking a lot of notes, and I'm doing taking a lot of video and things like this. And the one thing I saw with Mo Seider was there were three that were assigned just to Mo Seider, and they were constantly with him, working with him constantly. And I said, I don't see anybody else. Maybe you see one coaching staff with like three or four guys. You don't see one guy with three coaches. And I think they saw it then. I mean, when arguably the most accomplished, best defenseman of all time tells you that there's a guy that you need to come see, you take that real seriously, I mean, and I think that they have, to Steve Yzerman's credit, not only did he go and scout Mo immediately, drafted him, he has given him a ton of tools for success. He's really, really invested in Mo Seider, and another just great decision by Steve Yzerman. Mo Seider, you were just scratching the surface. The question, Joe, is, do you think that Mo Seider will ultimately in his career match or eclipse Nicholas Lindstrom?
It's hard to say because Lidstrom has been so good, but let me give you some statistics on why Sider is having just this. If he continues this, he might be at the same level as Lidstrom. This is Mo Sider 5-on-5 this year. The team is up 36-22 with him on the ice. They're down 51-29 with him off the ice. There's six. He has the sixth most minutes played for the ice, for fifth most defensive zone draws. He has a 60% shot share, 59.3 high danger chance share, and his expected goal share is 60.6%. So if that continues, he will be very well. Um, he'll be right up there. And I look at this thing that they put on the broadcast earlier. It was the X goals for percentage leaders among defensemen. You can see that Sider's right there with Gothisbehere, who should be on the team, Adam Fox, and Cal Markart and Jacob Chikrin. And I look at this and I go, this guy, Seider, having a great season. And I think we all knew that he could be, when you said that, when you went to training camp and you saw what you saw with Seider getting all the attention, you kind of take that for what it's worth, right? They're not going to spend time on a so-so player. They're going to spend time with a guy that they know is going to be a key piece of their organization. And what Seider has done in the past couple years has been fantastic. And this year, we're starting to see him take the step up. And I'm telling you right now, with Seider taking his step up, with Raymond taking his step up, you're starting to see this franchise take a step forward in terms of the players that they needed to take steps up are taking the steps up. You're getting contributions from Emmett Fenney. You're getting contributions from, Nate Danielson, Axel Sandin Pellikka, which I love Pellikka. And I loved Raymond coming in, but the reality of the situation is the Red Wings are coming into their own, and I think uh, Eisenman's drafts are going to become more and more paramount. You're going to start to see dividends from that. You know, w- one of the things we haven't talked about enough is how Detroit has been dealt with a bunch of bad luck. Like when you talk about Eisman, his drafts, you go, he picked fourth overall. That was his highest pick. That was in 2020. He picked sixth in 2021, eighth in 2022, ninth in 2023, and he picked last year 15th. So you think about that and you go, well, he got the 2023 draft. He had 9 and 17. He got St. Pelika and Danielson. They're on the roster. Casper was eighth overall. Edmondson was sixth overall, but you're starting to see like these kids are starting to become in their own. And when you don't get the top draft picks, you're kind of hoping that these players come faster than they are. But with this Red Wings team, you're starting to see they're coming faster. They're starting to get into their own, the way that they're playing. And it's been very rewarding to see this team take a step up. And Seider's taking a step up. Edmonton has taken a step up. Pelika in her first year is playing great. So I think this team is heading in the right direction. I think that Seider being in the Norris campaign is totally worth it. When you look at some of the statistics that I gave you, and you look at the stat card that he has, I mean, he's just playing at an all-world level. It doesn't matter how you slice it. This guy Seider has been playing at an all-world level, so he deserves to be in the Norris campaign. And like you said, Cindy, they don't just focus on guys. They don't send guys like Lidstrom to go deal with a guy like Seider just because he's a defensive pair guy that they like. They liked him from the start, and it's paid dividends. And that was Eisman's first pick at 6 overall, and it's paid dividends. I think that was the best. That was the best player. I mean, in that 2019 draft, I mean, obviously Jack Hughes at number 1 was a pretty damn good season, pretty damn good pick. But you look at the players that were picked above Slider, Capo Caco, Kirby Doc, Bowen Byram, Alex Turcotte, go through that. The Red Wings got the best pick that they could potentially get. And you can even go with the 2020 draft and Lucas Raymond. Alex Lafreniere was the first pick. Byfield second pick. Third pick was Tim Stützle. Raymond was fourth, and I can argue that the Red Wings got the better pick of that draft. And I look at the 2021 draft. This is Edmonton's draft. Owen Power, Marty Beniers. Marty Beniers is pretty good. Mason McTavish, Luke Hughes, Kent Johnson, all pretty good players. But I think Edmonton could be the best by the time this is over. What I'm saying is, Eisman was dealt differences with the way that this team was playing. The differences with the luck of the lottery balls that he was trying to get, and then you fall into this category where Evanson takes step up, Raymond takes step up. He got the best players in those drafts. It's easily with the Seider draft that was the best pick in that draft by far. So hats off to Eisman on that.
Well, one of the other things that I'm hearing as well, and Eric Miller made a comment here on the posts here, that he's going to go one up Seider for the Hart conversion. I think it would not surprise me to see Moritz Seider pick up one of them. Do I think he'll get both? I don't know about that. You've got Cale Makar in there, so that throws things off a little bit, right? You just don't know how he's going to end up second half of the season. But so I think that's kind of I don't say your wild card, but that's the big obstacle for Mo Seider to overcome. But it sure wouldn't surprise me to see him get one or the other. I think he's they're gonna have to give him something, because his play, I don't see his play going down at all. I see Seider's play only getting better. I think you're going to really see him, providing the Wings make the playoffs. And I'm with you, Joe. I agree that what Wings are going at this point. I would say they've got better than a 50-50 chance of making the playoffs, even if they tank in March. And I've had some other good friends of mine say, "Oh yeah, okay, great, we got through December," I, but March is where they really tank. That might be true, but here's the thing: they kept themselves out of the playoffs by literally a couple of points. And it wasn't because they tanked in March, it was because they didn't have enough to make up for it in December. That's where they really lost it that year. So, and when we went back and talked about if they'd only won this game, if they'd only won that game, you could have had the 2 points you needed to make the playoffs and all that kind of stuff. So, I think that they are rolling into this second half of the season with a tremendous amount of confidence, a coach who knows what he's doing, who knows how to handle this team and how to handle the unexpected. They know that March is a challenge. They're going to be prepared for that. And when they make it to the playoffs, you're going to see what Mo Sider can really do at that next level. And I believe that he is going to equal Kale McCarr, if not exceed even what we've seen from him. That's the kind of potential that I believe Mo Sider has. And I think we're going to see it in the postseason. We just haven't had the opportunity to see him in that environment yet. But when we do, it's going to put an exclamation point on the end of this kid's season.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting end of the season, and obviously the next couple games, they will play Carolina, which is going to be a big game. Toronto back to back, so that's going to be tough, but they'll get it done. And then New Year's Eve they'll play the Winnipeg Jets, which is a pretty decent game to play on. But the Winnipeg Jets have been struggling. The stat that I give the Red Wings a little bit of how do you want to say it? The stat that really tells how different this team is with Todd McClellan. The Red Wings are the best team in terms of getting high danger chances in the entire NHL. They're the only team that's close to them in terms of within 20 is the Colorado Avalanche. That's
Oh,
it.
they're unbelievable. They're like a machine. That that is now there is a series that would be absolutely killer to watch.
Well,
With
the Colorado Avalanche and the Red Wings will play late in January, and this is going to be an
yeah.
interesting time because they'll play late on January. That'll be the first one of the first ABC games, and then they'll play that Monday. So they play back to back pretty much, and it's going to be great hockey to watch. I think those will be two great games that will be definitely interested to hear, especially because it goes into the Olympic break,
Yeah.
and you have that huge kind of break in there. But this Red Wings team has been a lot better than I think anybody could have imagined. The way that they've been playing, and I think that Cider being in the Norris conversation is obviously something we don't take lightly. The Hart conversation, you're going to have a little bit of trouble with that because honestly, when you got players like Connor McDavid and Nate McKinnon, those guys will always get the shine over a guy like Cider or Cal Markar because they're front and center, and that's just the way it goes. But the Norris Trophy is for the defensemen, and the defensemen get the shine in that trophy. So I would look for the Red Wings to have a key player in the Norris conversation as we go towards February and go into the Olympic break. So I'm excited to see what this team could do, Cindy.
Well, it's interesting. I just want to respond to something else that Eric posted here. Eric Miller just posted. He said, and he's never missed a game. Sider's never missed a game. Can the Lions hire his trainer? And I think that's very funny. But I'll tell you, you know what it is? It's because he's German. Anybody who's familiar with German people, I married a guy who's a lot German. My kids are after Italian, they're German, right? And they they just have this work ethic. They're raised with it. It's part of their culture. It's part of their DNA. They are just these amazing workers, and they are just their workhorses. That's just who they are. And so I think it's primarily because he was just born like that and born into that, really. But I think it's also that he's definitely the kind of guy that is not going to waste one opportunity. He's very. I'll tell you, Mo Sider. One of the things that people may not know about him that I know is that he is very self-aware, and he always has been. Like, for a young man, that is very rare. Because Joe, I don't have to tell you how many of them I've talked to, right? That, like, say, the 27 and under crowd,
Yeah.
25 and under crowd, they they tend to not be very self-aware. They might be
Yes.
self-absorbed, but they're usually not very self-aware. And Mo Sider is very different in that way. He is very of self-aware of where he's at, what he can bring, and the fact that tomorrow's not promised to anybody. One injury, one bad bounce, one thing can change everything. And he's just a real self-aware kind of a kid, and he's always working on getting better, always working on getting better. And he comes from a family and a culture that pushes that work ethic. So it's just one of the things that he was a more mature player when he came in, a more self-aware player, but he's also just a such a hard worker. He just outworks people. So that's, I think, where you've got, again, that all contributes to a very bright future for this team coming up, because not only does Mo Sider have that, I think Emmett Finney's got that. Couple guys still got to come along, Raymond and Edvinson. My experiences with those guys, both great, by the way. They're great guys. They're great. They're good players, and they have the potential to be great players. But they're just a little more typical of your under 25 types, right? Edvinson had a little bit of an ego problem that he had to deal with, and he got put in his place real quick. And then Raymond just has a little more developing to go, a little more maturing to go. But I think that, he's kind of been, Larkin's kind of taken him under his wing a little bit, and that has helped him to mature. So just got to wait for the maturity level to kind of catch up with a couple of these guys. But Mo Sider came in with it,
Yeah.
and it served this team, and it served him very well.
I think we have hit the mark of a great player, and like you said, young player who recognizes the little things, and that matters the most. Especially with a young player, and that goes to Mo Sider's credit. And I think Sider, the way he plays is very Detroit like. He plays with a blue collar attitude where he likes to hit, he likes to score, and he loves to play defense. Just a great player, and he really embodies what the Red Wings should be about. And I think if you're a Red Wings player and you wanted someone to look at and go, how does he play the game and how could I play my game? I think when you look at Sider and Larkin, there is no better two captains than you can have those guys. Both one wears a C, one wears an A. Raymond wears an A. Raymond is not he's not this big player, but he plays with a huge lot of heart. So I look at those three captains and I go, there is no way that you could sit here and go, I can't raise my level of play a little bit higher when you watch those three. And I think that's why the Red Wings are at where they're at. And I think you look at the older players like Patrick Kane and Van Riemsdyk and all those guys and the way that they're playing. It's been very, very good for this team, and they're close to having uh they're close to having 5 10 goal scorers, and they have 2 20 goal scorers. And Alan, in the comments, he made a comment. I remember this. He said he predicted at least 35 goals for Larkin on May 1st, and who's laughing now because he's going to hit that. And I would have to see what he's projected at. Like, what is Dylan Larkin projected at in terms of goals? And if I look at it in terms of the projections, I don't know where he would be projected, but I think I would. What do you think he would be projected at? I'm pulling it up right now. Let's see what we got.
What would they have him? They've got to have him north of 30 at this point.
He's projected for 43 goals
Yeah,
and
yeah,
35 assists. Okay.
yeah.
That's pretty good. You look at DeBrincat, like what is DeBrincat projected at? DeBrincat 43 goals too. So there you go. Lucas Raymond is projected for 24 goals. And what is Seider? What's he got? Let's see what he is projected at. Seider's projected at 13 goals, 50 assists, 63 points. So you could have 4 players and 60 points. Sign me up. I think we would all signed up for that for sure.
And that's exactly what you're going to need when you roll into the playoffs and you're coming up against teams like, again, Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
You're coming up against teams like the Avalanche. You're
Yep.
coming up against teams that, probably Edmonton. I mean, you're coming up against Dallas. You're coming up against teams that are, this isn't their first rodeo. These are well-oiled machines. And, but I think the reason why, and I said this, I'm not surprised, by the way, Alan, I'm not surprised. I would have been right there with you. In fact, I was, with Larkin scoring more than 35 goals. I think Joe and I talked about this at the beginning of the season. And we talked about him being, I think, over under 40. And I think I said over because of Todd McClellan. Dylan Larkin has been the victim of poor coaches. He hasn't had the opportunity. He hasn't had anybody who helped him reach his potential. They were putting all the pressure on him to be the captain, the star player, the goal scorer, the head coach, the assistant coach. I mean, they had this guy being everything to everybody while everyone else kind of phoned it in. And Larks was out there by himself. Once you take that pressure off of him, and now he doesn't have to do anything but perform, he doesn't have to do anything but be the captain, lead by example. That's all he needs to worry about doing, and mentoring maybe some of these younger guys. He has the opportunity now to show you what he's capable of. And Todd McClellan has enabled that. And I will go back and say it again at the end of this. If you see the Red Wings in the playoffs, it is their MVP is Todd McClellan.
Mm. I agree. We go back on it last year that this time they were making the change of Todd McClellan a year after their first place. And this is a good point to end the podcast because this has been a great year, from this point on, from the firing of Lalone to the hiring of McClellan. You're starting to see it pay dividends with the players playing better, the team playing better, the team more orchestrated. And God forbid, we don't have to go through this bull crap again about the 2 years of point percentage and the 2 years of win percentage the last 2 years. So, been a great start to the season. Obviously, we'll go into 2026 with the Detroit Red Wings in a good spot. Obviously, you have that month off. So, January is very important because you'll have a month off in February with the Olympics. In March, I looked it up, Cindy. Everyone cries about March, but the reality of March hockey is there is only 3 teams over the past 3 years that have had over a 500 win percentage in March. It doesn't happen often. It doesn't happen because it turns into playoff hockey in March and April. So there you go.
Well, and the reality, Joe, is guys get hurt. By the
Yes.
time March rolls around, you've got injuries that are impacting your performance. So I think it's going to be key for the Red Wings to stay healthy. I think they need to focus on minimizing the risks that guys are putting themselves under and
Mhm.
in situations they're putting themselves in. If they can minimize risk, stay well conditioned, and stay healthy, that is going to be the key to a successful March, and it's going to be the absolute catalyst, no doubt, in terms of getting to the postseason.
All right, that's the end of the Red Alert podcast. Me and Cindy are giving you the gist of it. Good hour of hockey conversation. We'll have more. It's been a weird start to the year for me and Cindy, so we'll get back on the horse and get ready to go. Obviously, I might do some solo podcasts. Maybe Cindy might do some stuff, just on the Red Alert podcast page. But we're going to be doing more. We're going to have a new link tree that's going to go out so you guys can stay more in tune with the Red Wings and all that jazz. And there's going to be things that are coming out that will be really good for this podcast in terms of its development and its growth. And the Red Wings are obviously a good team, so we have to be on our top game. So we were on our top game today, and we will be on our top game going forward. So thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you're on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, and then JC Sports Detroit's where we'll play the podcast for the meantime, because trying to grow the YouTube is going to be a little bit difficult, but we'll get that work or that orchestrated too.
Well,
But
and you know what helps, Joe? If we can just remind everybody, if you had a great time with us today, if you enjoy talking hockey like we do, Red Wings hockey, like, subscribe, follow, and tell your friends to like, subscribe, and follow. This is I promise you, some of the best hockey talk you're going to get, because we get it from the inside out. You'll hear a lot of stuff from sources that other people just don't have. And we also love to involve you guys. Eric, Alan, thanks for the comments. Everybody who made comments, we appreciate that. We love hearing from you guys, and we love to always spotlight that on our show. So tell your friends, like, follow, subscribe. It's free.
and we'll never ever uh, BS you. I think that's one of the most dishonest things that you could do as a media person. So we will not we're the whole media. It's falling apart anyways. So as content people, we will make sure that you are informed and you have the right stats and statistics and opinions. That way you can make educated things, and that's just the way this podcast works. We're not going to throw horrible takes at you and all that jazz. So anytime you're listening to the podcast, you're going to get the real honest opinions, and they're backed by factual data and everything. So we'll see you guys in the next podcast. We talk more Detroit Red Wings hockey. I'm Joe.
I'm Cindy.
And we will see you in the next podcast. We talk more Detroit Red Wings hockey.
See you then.